very nice. I don't know any of you, and you still gave me applause. That's really charming. Oh, wow. Well, the Nisei Writers Workshop came about as the result of a personal experience I had speaking with junior high school students. I wrote a book a number of years ago, A Family History, and it turned out the family history had a broader audience than I'd originally anticipated. And I've been asked to speak. And I want to share with you some of the things that the students fed back to me after hearing the story about the Japanese Americans when they came to the United States, what they went through during the Second World War, and what it was like to resettle and to rebuild their lives after the war was over. And because of the comments that I'm about to read to you, I realized how important stories are as they pass through generations. I realized how it was emphasized to me how important it is that none of us are facing situations that others haven't faced before us. And what we can do with the people who are going to follow us, the people who are going to take over this earth, the people who are going to be responsible for our cultures and our country, are people that have to be given courage. And hearing the stories of the elders is one brilliant way of doing that. Oh, thank you. So I was prompted to do a workshop, and thanks very much to poets and writers, we made it possible to do 2 workshops in Los Angeles. And again, because of my ethnicity, I'm of Japanese descent, it made sense for me to reach out to American writers, Japanese American writers, who are looking to find their voice. And we're going to have 3 writers share with you some of the work they've done. But first, I'd like to talk a little bit about what those 7th graders told me. So when I asked them at the end of our time together, if someone comes up to them and says, well, you just spent an hour with Naomi, what did you get out of it? So I asked them to write down the one thing that they took away from our time together. And here are 5 comments. And the title of the book, by the way, was Bend with the Wind. And the idea is not to, to be like bamboo, and when times get tough, don't let it break you. You will come back. So the first comment is, what I remember the most is how I should bend with the wind and not let it break me. I learned to be proud of who I am no matter what the situation. Don't let anything hold you back from pursuing your dreams. Be informed. Don't repeat the bad choices and embrace the good ones. We should learn this so it doesn't happen again. We are the future. These are 12-year-olds. So with that, I'd like to introduce you to 3 of the writers that attended the 2 workshops that Jamie sponsored at the Little Tokyo Library. I'd like to introduce Ron Osajima.
This is the story of life after Manzanar, Manzanar being one of the concentration camps that Japanese Americans were put in during World War II. My family left the Manzanar incarceration camp in Southern California's desert in September of 1945 when I was 10 years old. We had nowhere to stay, and we're fortunate that the Japanese American Evergreen Baptist Church in Los Angeles took us in. My parents, 13-year-old brother, 11-year-old sister, and I slept in a cubicle used for Sunday school classes. After a few weeks at the church, we moved to my uncle's house, then to a rental house, while my mother looked at houses for sale. During my mother's search, realtors told her that houses in some parts of LA were not available to Japanese people. She was able to buy a house in Boyle Heights, a low-income area principally populated by Mexican Americans whose numbers increased as Jewish families moved out. I didn't feel underprivileged because everyone I knew was in the same boat. Although my father was successful in the wholesale produce business before the war, starting over was not possible. So he drove to Japanese American neighborhoods each day and sold fruits, vegetables, and Japanese food off the back of his truck. He worked 6 days a week and got home after we finished dinner. We had very little interaction with him, and day-to-day parenting was left to my mom. In her indirect way, Mom made sure we towed the line. Like many Japanese American adults, my parents never discussed their feelings about the incarceration and their devastating financial losses. My parents' silence left me seeing Boyle Heights as a step up from Manzanar. I did not think about what our government did to us and how it affected our post-war lives. We were the only Japanese family in our neighborhood, and life was fine for me. My new best school friend was a Jewish boy named Teddy, and my neighborhood friends were Mexican Americans. We played football and baseball in the street and also played at the local playground. The move to Boyle Heights resulted in my transferring to my 4th elementary school in the 1945 fall semester. At the end of the semester, the principal promoted me 1 full grade. That seemed okay since I still had the same after-school friends and had no difficulty with the new schoolwork. Our family's social life consisted primarily of seeing relatives on Sundays. Living in Boyle Heights largely shielded us from the discrimination faced by Japanese Americans in white neighborhoods, and I recall only one racial incident. I was walking home from school when some little kid sang, "Chino, Chino, Japones, Kome kaka no me des," which in English is Chinese, Chinese, Japanese, eat shit and don't give me any. Many years later, I related this story to a Chicana student I was helping at California State University, Fullerton, through the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute's collaboration program. Embarrassed, she said, "This song is still sung in my East Side neighborhood." I was surprised, but not too surprised, since many Japanese Americans in private did, and to a much lesser extent still do, speak disparagingly about other ethnicities. I joined the Woodcraft Rangers, an organization that supported children in underserved communities like South Central and East LA. As a leader of our school's Woodcraft Ranger tribe, I learned a valuable lesson in leadership. During a meeting, the boys would not quiet down, so I said, "If I hear one more peep from any of you, I'm leaving." The room grew quiet until one smart aleck said, "Peep." I didn't want to leave the organization, but I felt compelled to abide by what I said, so I walked out and never returned. Lesson: never give people an ultimatum unless you are prepared to live with either outcome. Thank you. Our next speaker is Adeline. Adeline?
A nightmare of Tule Lake is laid to rest. In July 1996, I attended a pilgrimage at the Tule Lake Segregation Center. Following Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941, the signing of Executive Order 9066 in February 1942, and the forced removal of 120,000 people of Japanese ancestry from their homes. My parents, 3 siblings, and I were among the 18,000 incarcerated at Tule Lake. I was 7 years old. The U.S. Army rounded us up and loaded us onto trains. My sister and I did not understand and were excited about going somewhere new. We did not realize how upset our parents were over the loss of their freedom, their home, and their livelihood. They never said anything because they did not know where we were going and what was going to happen to us. Despite the uncertainties, family found ways for children to have fun in camp. In the summer, we played among the tall reeds surrounding the lakes. We collected little white seashells. We splashed in wooden Japanese bathtubs, and we watched our fathers play baseball. I recall yelling at opposing pitchers, "Spaghetti arm, you can't pitch." The winters were harsh. We huddled around our barracks' inadequate pot-belly stove. The snow outside topped our boots, so our feet were always cold. One bitter day, my father brought hot water from the bathhouse and poured it into the tub we kept in our barrack. This was a happy time. We all put our feet in the water, and I shrieked with laughter when my mother played footsie with me. In October 1943, the camp problems grew from both internal and external conflicts. Gangs preyed upon people at night. Frustrations and anger increased with escalating violence. The army came in. Soldiers searched for contraband, and we children were so scared that our bodies shook. We remained in Tule Lake because my father later became ill and was hospitalized. Nights were frightening, eerie, and dark, except for searchlights that swept the grounds. To maintain order, the Army held unscheduled blackouts. You could not see your hands before your face. I was trapped in the latrine during a blackout and cried until my father came. He was the block manager and allowed to carry a lantern. I was so relieved to see him. One morning, I witnessed a terrible accident. Through a classroom window, I saw a man enter a fire-damaged building. The roof collapsed as he entered. A loud noise and large puffs of dust followed. I saw the man's black shoes and green pants under the fallen roof. The teacher closed the shades and continued the lessons as if nothing happened. I was stunned and forbidden from talking about what I saw. I began having nightmares and wondered if I imagined the accident. The nightmares continued for the next 25 years. Then came the 1996 pilgrimage bus tour. An angel guided me to a bus with one vacant seat. I sat next to Mary Kawano, and she introduced me to her two brothers, Tom and Jim. Mary spoke of their father's death in camp. My heart raced as she explained how a building collapsed on him, killing him instantly. We cried when I told my story, and we pieced together what happened 50 years earlier. I learned that the man I saw was real. He had a family, a wife, and children. In turn, my story helped his children find closure. My life changed that day. I was able to say goodbye to Mr. Kawano and pray that he rest in peace. Thank you for listening to my story. I would like to introduce you to Irma Fukumoto.
Being Japanese in Mexico during World War II, my father was an Nisei who during the 1930s lived briefly with family in California before moving to Chihuahua, Mexico, a border town near El Paso, Texas. My mother was born and raised in Japan, and like many women at that time, was a picture bride. She made a long trip by boat to Mexico, married father, and settled in Chihuahua. Father owned a grocery store and was eventually able to buy other property. When World War II broke out, all Japanese in Mexico were required to move away from the U.S. border. The Mexican police escorted father, mother, my brother, and me 900 miles south to Mexico City, and a friend disposed of father's property in Chihuahua. Father purchased another store. Our family grew to 7, and we live in 2 bedrooms in the back of the building. One was for sleeping, the second one was for cooking, merchandise, storage, and bathing. Our home had electricity and cold running water, and Mother heated the water on a gas stove. Mother did the laundry on the roof and hung everything on a clothesline to dry. Sometimes clothes were missing. Father tended the store from 7 to 9. The cramped space meant he was constantly moving goods around. Mother helped in the afternoon while she sewed, crocheted, and knitted. She occasionally took a short nap, curled up in the sofa, and then went back to the store until closing. The family ate dinner together at 9:30 p.m. Father was a wily, hardworking man. He did not each man and talk even less, but he was a good listener. Occasionally, after a few drinks, he would tell stories of the forced move and financial loss caused by the war. Our lives turned quickly from comfort to hardship, but Father never complained. Many friends shared the same experience. Mother too never complained. She had many friends and was funny. We were fortunately because she was a strong person. She liked to cook and tried to new dishes. She made the best tamales for Christmas. Friends celebrated New Year's at our house, and many marveled at her skill. Rice was difficult to cook because of Mexico City's high altitude, but Mother found a way. There were 5 Japanese schools in Mexico City. We attended Mexican schools in the morning and the Chuo Gakuen Japanese school in the afternoon. Mother walked with us to the bus stop every day. The 2-lane road in front of our store was dangerously busy with cars, taxis, streetcars, and trucks from the cement plant at the end of the street. At Japanese school, we studied reading, writing, social studies, geography, math, judo, odori, Japanese dance, and sumie, brush riding. Once or twice a year, all 5 schools competed in sports for prizes. The 40 minutes ride to Japanese school was exhausting. More than once, we fell asleep, missed our stop, and had to ride the route again. Father gave us bus fare, not thinking we might lose it. But when we did, the drivers were very kind and let us drive anyway. We were Catholic because there were no Buddhist temples in Mexico City. We attended Sunday services and took classes to prepare for baptism, confirmation, and communion. We were fortunately because a Mexican priest named Father Ramirez spoke Japanese. Looking back over the years, I see how our life experiences were. We learned and followed many different customs, yet we were able to keep our own without the pressure to change. Thank you very much.